or when have we had ontological shock? And so some things that come to mind is when the New World was discovered, when North America and South America were stumbled upon, and it became, I mean, I've read accounts where that discovery was very disturbing to a lot of European academics or court people,
you know, the map of the world down.
Yeah, and so that's one. Another one I can think of is ongoing today, which is the more or less the collapse of religion. Collapse is not the right word, but I'm fascinated by just this general topic of what do people believe and how that is so important to their lives. And the Mormon Church is having a significant problem because they're built on a 200-year-old, very odd account. And what's happening to the Mormons who become convinced that Mormonism is not true is they don't become Christians. They go, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I think it's true. They go all the way to become, many of them, to become atheists or, more disturbing, nihilists. So that's another kind of episode or instance of ontological shock. And then you mentioned non-human intelligence when you talked about what might cause ontological shock. And I don't know if you meant artificial intelligence when you used that phrase, but I also think even today we're beginning to see the stubble, you know, the little green shoots emerging of ontological shock as people come to grips with what AI and is going to be, and then what that means for human significance.
Can I add one more to that?
Sure, yeah.
I was thinking when Freud comes out and says, you know, I'm pretty confident there's this thing called the unconscious, and it has a lot of control over what you do and how you perceive things. We're still going, there are many people who still don't believe that. And we're still going through ontological shock from that.
Well, World War I was an ontological shock for the European mainland. I mean, the level of death and destruction during World War I was totally unexpected. In fact, so I think if we think about it, we can think about other moments that are generally in the broad category, but perhaps not
as extreme, because
as extreme as what John is talking about. But I'd like to hear what John has to say.
So we tried hard as part of the preparedness plan to think what the appropriate analogies were. And I'm reminded that early on in my uNHIdden days, one of our psychologists said a revelation of this nature, ontological shock, it's like being told you've got cancer. And I said, no. It's like everybody in the whole world being told they've got cancer at the same time. And that's a slightly negative image. There are definitely some good things and positive things. We'll come back to that about the nature of disclosure. But the point is that those two were somewhat failed analogies. One then looks back over history, and you've mentioned a couple of these. There are definitely two previous big revelations about the human's position in the universe not being as primary as people thought at the time. Clearly, Galileo and the change of the model with the Earth not being at the center of the universe, and then Darwin, that mankind is not special. Yeah. We're all animals, and it might be that we're heading towards this further shock of so it's 1, 2, 3, and the third one is that our position is not as we think of sort of top species, but we might be somewhere sort of in the middle, or there might be a much more broad collection of sentient species, and that's what I mean by non-human intelligence. Mm-hmm. You mentioned artificial intelligence, AGI or ASI, and a few people have said to me, you would perhaps do better. You do better with some of the funding grants you didn't bother with all this UAP, non-human intelligence stuff, and you concentrated on psychological security around AI and AGI? My answer to that is, you're right, that would be easier, but we're not taking the easy path here. And it's the fact that it is so difficult to push back on stigma and shame to do with UAPs and non-human intelligence that we're doing what we're doing. So we're not taking that one. I think the final of your very interesting points, Carmen, you made is around the ontological shock, either from a European perspective or an indigenous population perspective, in terms of the arrival of Europeans in North and South America. And I think that links to the point you made around religion, that to some extent, the Europeans may have been very shocked to find that there was a landmass out there, but they had a fundamental and ineffable belief in non-human intelligence, in God. They had religion, and they were able to say, in God we trust, and say their prayer and keep me safe and all of that. And one of the things that's changed in the 500 years since then is this move to this sort of Cartesian worldview, this rejection of religion. And I went to the first Soul Foundation symposium in Stanford in October 2023. Fantastic couple of days. Immediately before and after each other, two speakers on the subject of UAPs and religion. The late, wonderful Paul Thigpen, the Catholic thinker and theologian, he said Roman Catholicism would be fine. That he quoted a cardinal from 2011 who said, they're all God's children. And then immediately after him was Jeff Kripal from Rice University, who said basically all religions are stuffed.